Hey everyone, this is Eric J, and welcome to your Bury Me in Starfields behind the scenes Monday update number 11 for the date August 7th, 2022. This one's entitled You Did It to Yourself. I'm going to do things a little bit differently today. I have a little bit of a fear that my long-winded written out updates are a little TLDR for some of you. So I thought I'd give it a shot and do kind of a podcasty thing for those of you that aren't such big fans of reading. And we'll see how this goes. Let me know in the comments what you think, what I could do better, if this is something that I should keep doing. And with that little introduction out of the way, I'm going to go ahead and read the update as if it is a script for some kind of podcasty thing. So here we go. You did it to yourself. During lockdown, my friend Miriam and I would set up to work together over Zoom. Sometimes our friend Christina would join us, sometimes another friend or friends. But for me, the constant was always Miriam there in the screen, plugging away at her work while I plugged away at mine. It was a less ridiculous than you might think approximation of being in an office, which was a very novel thing for me after these last 20 years of working from home and in a decidedly solitary manner. It was long periods of silence, punctuated by quick stabs of dialogue, often coupled with laughter. And it is within that framework that I told Miriam to just say, you did it to yourself, if I started to give indications that I was about to start bitching about my work. It would be a better story if she just somehow developed a preternatural sense of when to just let it fly. She didn't. But the reality is still pretty hilarious, to me at least. The best were the times when I'd just say, Miriam, and she'd immediately say, you did it to yourself. You did it to yourself. It's the story of my life, and has become a mantra to keep me centered and driving forward. If I blame my work woes on an external force, say a writer or an editor, it introduces a certain poison into the work which makes it very easy to drift from. Especially as the hours pile up and you start to ask questions like, is this worth the effort? You did it to yourself originally was meant as a self-deprecating bit of fun. But I think I've known deep down subconsciously that it's much more than that. It's a shorthand reminder of a much larger concept that encompasses the goals that I've had since day one, the new goals I've made along the way, the wins, the losses, the lessons, what could be, patience, perseverance, every choice, good or bad, that's led me to this place. In your darkest, most tedious hours, when you're starting to spiral, to drift, all of those things are contained in that simple phrase, and it centers me. You did it to yourself. I've been thinking about that a lot these last few days working on this short. It's been eye-opening to say the least. To be fair to myself, I've been fairly aware of the massive amount of work that I was taking upon myself with this project. I've been working in comics for over 20 years now, so it's not my first rodeo. And I mean, if you've been reading these updates, I'm fairly certain you've seen at least the impression of the scars I've accumulated over these years of making quote-unquote funny books. So I didn't embark on this odyssey unaware. But I must confess that that awareness has been a bit skewed by a certain abstraction. The difference between having a sense of the work intellectually and knowing the weight through practical application. This short was always going to be a bellwether. Again, if you've been following along with these updates, I've described it as exactly that consistently. These next two shorts are the practical application test beds that will give me the information that I need to plan, make timetables, determine some work-life balance best practices for myself, and it can't be overstated, provide me with some increasingly concrete process steps going forward. Because actually, for parts of this process, the writing, the lettering, the coloring, it actually is my first rodeo. You did it to yourself. So, the intellectual and the practical crashed headlong into one another over the last few days. And I have to be honest, I wasn't as prepared as I thought I was. I'll try to list some of the ways here. Number one, this is the first story that I've attempted that I didn't have pretty crystal clear in my head before attempting to put it down into pixels. Basically, that just means that I had the story in my head, but I didn't, and still don't, honestly, which is really uncomfortable, have the story beats solidly clear on my outline before I started to work, and by work I mean started to draw. Yeah, I thought I did, truly. I wrote a nice little outline, poured over it until I thought it was pretty tight, and then got into laying it out on the page, and that was my first indicator that perhaps I didn't have things as neatly tight in my head as I thought I might have had. That feeling of uncertainty carried through to the penciling stage on the very first page, in which I had to reconfigure a panel that I'd spent a considerable amount of time on in layouts because the beat wasn't working. And I needed the focus to be different in the composition. And that bit of rewriting is indicative of where my head is at with this entire short. I'm becoming familiar with the sensation of dialogue kind of writing and rewriting itself in my head as I lay out and then draw these pages. But this is the first one where the entire narrative structure of the piece seems to be settling organically as I make my way through it. You know, as opposed to having the visual beats pretty concretely certain as I start to draw. So, I'm faced with the reality that the hours that I spent coming up with the initial outline were the first draft. And the action of laying out the 5, it ballooned, pages was the first rewrite. Penciling the first page has been the second. And I will probably be continuously rewriting until the final panel of the final page is penciled. I mean, hopefully I'll be done with the writing as opposed to the scripting at that point. Hopefully. This might be the point where some amongst you might smugly suggest that this is why scripts are written. To which I would reply, there is no one way to reach the destination. And my brain just doesn't work that way. I mean, not yet. You want a surefire way to ensure this project never gets completed? Make me write scripts. I will drift so fast and never make my way back. Scripts, to me anyway, are notes. They're ephemeral. Pages, even just the scratchiest layouts, are real. This is a place where I want to say you get it, but I'm not sure many of you will. I will say this. I'm developing more empathy for my strictly writer compatriots who have these lovely scripts sitting around waiting to be born if only they can find an artist. You have my sympathy, brothers and sisters. You really do. Number 2. So that not-so-slight standing on quicksand sensation I've been having about this short is the beginning of my unease about jumping into this particular story. I mean, I thought long and hard about continuing with my initial plan of going ahead with the short that I'd been planning on doing for over a month first, because it's clearer in my head, but also, and crucially, because it's going to be quicker and easier for me to draw. This new short that's now superseding that one is set entirely at Comic-Con. in the crowds of Comic-Con. The crowds of Comic-Con. I mean, ask literally any comic book artist what one thing they don't want to draw, and they will likely respond, crowds. And this one is 5 pages of crowds. Big crowds. Daunting would be the kindest of understatements to describe that particular proposition. So I had to really think hard about what I wanted to do. And this particular story is a nonsense lark that made me chuckle. Is it worth the effort that it's going to take to make it real? I ultimately, obviously, decided the answer was yes, it is, but maybe not for the reasons that will be obvious to the casual reader. This story is the literal definition of jumping into the deep end. The story beats aren't solidly known to me. I know from experience it's going to be a bitch to draw. I don't know from experience how hard it's going to be to color. I have a sense of it, but I don't know for sure. And, that'll be valuable experience. I'm determining now that from a process standpoint, I'm probably going to have to script it before I ink it. Hell, before I even tightly finish the pencils. So that I can letter it and then determine what I don't need to draw and color to save some precious time. From a technical standpoint, it is the obvious best beginning point, however daunting it may be. From a creative standpoint, it's also the obvious starting point. Since it's not in canon, it makes sense to do it before I jump into canon stories. It still offers me an opportunity to introduce some canon concepts, but also allows me to have some fun, not just with my character, but with a few of my friends as well. Not least of which is my con partner in crime, Chris, who's been my Comic-Con teammate for the past 5-7 Comic-Cons. And, I'm doing likenesses on top of massive crowd scenes in this one. It's challenge level elite. Number 3, a quick related aside with regard to the technical challenge. Back in the day when I was trying to break into comics, you used to physically mail sample pages of your art to editors at Marvel, DC, and the handful of independent publishers that were open to hiring freelance artists, as opposed to being solely focused on publishing creator-owned projects like Bury Me and Starfields. But mainly to Marvel and DC. If the editor liked your work, but wanted to test you, they often sent you a script, the setting of which was like a carnival with its crowds and odd-shaped booths and attractions, and see if you could do it. If you could do it, the question then was how fast. The idea being that if you could nail the carnival set pages in a timely manner, you should, theoretically, be capable of handling whatever they threw at you. Again, challenge level elite. So this story is my carnival challenge to myself. And not shrinking from it is important. And not rationalizing my way out of it is important. And not skimping on it is important. Number 4. Having said all that, I might have been a little less aggressive jumping into the story than I would have liked, which is frankly another important aspect to not only doing this story but completing it, and not just completing it but making it something I'm proud of. The already mentioned quicksand sensation, the level of challenge, and the uncertainty of the creative value versus the amount of effort required to achieve it all add up to prime procrastination and rationalization, to chuck it or at least delay it, fodder. Also, some prime face your fears fodder. And I mean, I'd be lying if I didn't entertain the thought that the totally unprecedented technical difficulties that I talked about last week while working on the cover for this little story, and I still haven't restarted the drawing on that yet, might be a signal from the universe that this story just isn't it, you know? But I don't believe in signs from the universe, not totally anyway. And B, sometimes shit happens, and sometimes you have to do things that you're not super comfortable with. And just because this is my thing, and I can do what I want, and it's up to me to determine the value, doesn't mitigate those facts. It's face your fears. You did it to yourself. You did it to yourself. Number 5. Now, it would be really cool to report that once I got into it, I realized that I'd built up this anxiety in my head and just needed to get started to realize it's just not that bad. As you do, right? Well, if anything, I realized that I'd underplayed just how difficult this particular story is going to be to complete. Mind you, I'm talking about time here, not some can I do it type of challenge. I mean, I know it's well within my capabilities, but as is a bit of a theme in my professional life, I thought I'd be able to knock this one out much quicker than it realistically looks like I'm going to be able to. Which is fine. Getting that kind of practical application experience is kind of the whole point of this particular story. But I don't think I was prepared for how much more time I'm seeing on the horizon. And I really wasn't prepared for the realization of just exactly how much time and work I've committed to for my foreseeable future. I mean, the very first panel of the very first page took me the better part of a day to pencil and like half ink. The crowd is straight to ink because there's no fucking way I'm going to draw that twice. And man, I cheated my ass off on that panel. So as I'm drawing that thing, knowing that it would be the worst one, kind of a just get it done, then the pressure at least lessens, right? Kind of thing. Well, wrong. I still have to color that fucker. And every other panel with a crowd, an ever-changing crowd, after it for 5 pages. The reality of the task I've taken on really started to hit home at that point. And it was like one of those shots in a horror film where the hallway just keeps getting longer and longer and longer. Like looking at years of your life just keeps stretching on. This exact thing is my life for the foreseeable future. Spiral, which leads back to you did it to yourself, and then center. This is what I want to do. This is the work that I'm built for. This story is going to be so fun and so worth it, and I'll know better what kind of planning I need for this kind of ambitious story in the future. So that I never have to fear the challenge again, even though I will, but hopefully less so. And, this story is giving me that. No matter how long it takes, this story is giving me that. And I get to bring a couple of friends along for the ride. It's good. You're good. Now, get back into it. So, if all goes to plan, it'll be ready for you all by next week, although maybe not by Monday. I'm going to try. I'm really going to try. But regardless, I'll see you back here on Monday, even if it's just to tell you that it isn't ready yet. But hopefully will soon be. Okay, that's it for now. Everybody have good weeks, and if you've been listening to this, I hope you enjoyed it. And like I said at the top, if you've got any comments, or you particularly enjoyed it and you want me to keep doing these kinds of things, drop me a note. Let me know. Let me know if there's something I could do better. I'm doing this straight into my iPad. My iPad's mic, so I know the sound quality isn't the best. And if this is something that you do enjoy, if this is something that you'd like me to keep doing, then maybe that's something I can, allocate some resources towards trying to get a better microphone, a better setup, so that I can do this a little bit more professionally in the future. But for now, hopefully it was fun spending, a little over 20 minutes with me, and I'll talk to you on Monday. See you then.